I can see that everyone in who's joined the webinar is mostly, I think there's one or two who are not UK Homes Network members. So if you're already a member, I apologise, but we'd love to see your posts, get your feedback in the network after this in terms of any sort of additional questions you've got, any discussion topics that you want to carry on into the network would be great. But if you're not a UK Homes Network member, please scan the QR code, or you can go to the app stores, whether you're on iOS or you're on Android. You can search UK Homes Network in your app store and download the platform. It's free to download and become a member. You'll be able to network with lots of like-minded individuals from across the property industry. We're due to hit 1,000 members by Christmas, so it would be amazing to have you involved. You'll see some great discussion topics going on in there, and it's just a chance for you to showcase your business and what you do in the industry. So we'd love to have you in the network. Please do feel free to join us. Ben is one of our network champions. He's regularly posting and sharing some interesting things. I'm not going to steal his thunder because he does have several businesses, not just Land Attic, and he has several different coloured suits for each of them. But Ben has a sort of range of expertise and stuff that he's posting in the network. So if you're interested in learning more about property development, property investment, or you want to network with a range of experts from across the industry like Ben, then please do join us. It would be great to have you in there. As I say, if you want to scan the QR code or download the app. And for our existing members who are already in the platform, thank you so much for all your posts and everything you've been sharing over the last couple of months. We're really starting to get busy now, and it's great to see so many of you using the platform to find so many connections. So I really do appreciate it. I'm going to say hello to a couple of people in the chat. So we've got Mohammed. Welcome, Mohammed. We've got Alex. Morning, gents. We've got Ruki joining us. Good morning. Marie is plugging her carpet vinyl tiles direct. Fantastic. Yeah, please feel free to plug your businesses in the chat if you want to. But you can also do that in UK Homes Network as well. So after this, if you want to join up, then please do. I'll just put a quick link in the chat. But yeah, Ben, we've got you on because we did this session probably about, 7 months ago, and it got an amazing reaction from people in terms of them wanting to talk a little bit more about empty homes. A lot of people weren't aware about it. We've all drove down high streets. We've all drove down sort of various suburban areas within our local communities and seen that one house that's on the corner of a street that's looking dilapidated. Clearly, no one's there anymore, and it screams of an opportunity for redevelopment and getting a young family in there. But it just sits year after year after year. The seasons change, but the property doesn't much. It just gets worse and worse. And I think what we're trying to do with this webinar is we're trying to showcase the fact that there is a really important issue with these empty homes across the country, but it means that there's so much opportunity for us in terms of whether you're in property development or just in the wider property industry, of how we can retrofit and revitalize those homes to be available family homes for people across the country, particularly when we're talking month after month about a huge housing crisis. So, Ben, please, for those that don't know you, that haven't seen one of our webinars before, introduce yourself, tell them a little bit about Land Attic, and obviously why this issue is so important to yourself.
Thanks, Chris, for a great introduction into that. We're so passionate about empty properties and empty homes. I mean, for me, personally driving past so many empty properties and just think, what on earth is going with that? And you can feel the frustration. My frustration is probably that I wasn't a billionaire already, because I would have actually bought all of these properties, turn them around, put people in them, probably making even more money, hopefully, but actually doing a real necessary need of these properties that are just sitting, just completely empty and just not being used. I think then my frustration, and through that frustration, made me then create a platform effectively. And the platform is Landatic. And what Landatic does, and I will very briefly share in a second with what it actually just a screenshot of what it looks like, is it's a platform for business people to pick up and see data coming in from an individual sending in a picture of an empty, derelict building or property. We're so keen on spotlighting exactly what happens across the whole of the UK, getting these over to local authorities, getting these over to developers, over to investors, people who really matter, and actually just can really showcase and spotlight all of these opportunities that are out there. I'm just going to very quickly just share my screen, so hopefully people are kind of are able to see this. What you're seeing here effectively is just a very snapshot of the map that we have. This is just a community member who's just taken a photo of an empty derelict property. Through the app, what they can do is they get points every time they send a new property in, and then they also get points for updating it as well. If I'm zooming out, I've just chosen Birmingham as just an easy example. I won't get too far because it'll probably crash the system, but you can see the amount of pin drops that we have, people constantly sending these in. I'm just going to stop the share on that one. The key for us is just getting. Oh, sorry.
Just in Birmingham alone, that's quite.
It's just in Birmingham alone. I mean, what we've got is I think it's over about 15,000 empty properties now that have currently been uploaded into the system. And as I said, they're constantly being updated because people get rewarded for every time that they update a photo. It's all just run through the their app, the community app that people have, and they're called our Land Heroes. And over the last, 370 registrations over the past 10 days, just the Landatic alone, just to see this information. Real mixture of people, EPCs, local authorities, agents. There's just so many people that want to be involved in this side of things. But yeah, I'm Landatic. I'm set up it's about 2-3 years ago now. And the app is the thing that's really sort of taken off over the past sort of 18 months as well, and really getting all this data sort of flowing through the system. So one thing I was going to just start with was just some of the stats. I know that's me launching straight into it rather than giving too much more of an introduction myself. I'm a surveyor by background. I've worked in the chartered surveying industry now for, gosh, almost over 20 years now, specialising in constraints. But this has become like a huge passion of mine in terms of actually seeing a lot more of these properties reoccupied. So just a few stats to kick things off, and I think then we can probably even get back into some of the national media. I think this is what's been fascinating now, is people are really jumping on the bandwagon in terms of the press are really sort of pulling into this, knowing we've got a massive housing crisis in the UK anyway. I think we've got about the best part of about 90,000 homes shortfall, new homes each year. In terms of just empty homes, in terms of long-term empty homes, the stats from I think Action for Empty Homes, it's about over 250,000. So that's just completely long-term empty homes, no occupation, nothing happening with them. Shelter reporting, we've got homelessness of about 300,000 at the moment, which is just absolutely crazy numbers. We also then have, I think the Countryside Alliance published something about how much brownfield land we have. We've got something like 27,000 hectares of land. I mean, that's equivalent to about 1.23 million homes opportunity. It's not even scratching the surface. I mean, I'm talking about empty homes and empty properties, but you've got empty office space as well. So 100 million square feet estimated of empty office space. I don't think that accounts for all the stuff above shops. I'm certain it doesn't. And I don't think it's also accounting for a lot of the stuff that is probably people paying rates, but it's just not on the register for it being empty as well. So we've got a huge amount of stock of what is empty opportunities, which we're desperate to make sure it's highlighted and really pulled through to local authorities. So I know I've properly launched in there, but it's just a really exciting opportunity. I mean, I think we even looked at just what was just a snapshot of what the value of that could be. And if we took some estimations and said, okay, well, maybe not all those empty homes could come once, but let's say a lot of them could do. It's that 250,000 number. That's how many empty homes or long-term empty homes there are. If we then added that to what would be a proportion of that office space that could be converted, an average sort of house size, maybe 750, maybe up to 850 square feet. That'd be like a 2-3 bed type home or property. If we then added that all to some of the brownfield opportunities, but we appreciate planning, and you're not suddenly deliver 1.23 million homes just in 1 year. then we looked at about circa 400,000 just latent empty space that could come through in any single year. Um, that as a value proposition is it's over 110 billion. Just the chain of people being involved in there is huge. The opportunity is huge. So I know I've gone straight into topic, but it is exciting, and it's probably why I've just jumped straight into it. And I just wanted to just kind of get some of those things out there first, and it probably sets up some of the other things we're probably perhaps going to talk about.
Yeah, I think it's really important to understand the size of the issue that's going on here, because it's been reported, it's been talked about by Labour and Keir Starmer that we need to build 1.5 million homes. And a lot of that rhetoric is around building new homes and putting pressures on developers to build vast sites out in the countryside, and to facilitate building properties that way, and creating homes that way. But when you actually look at the size of what we're not utilizing at the moment, there's a massive productivity issue just from a sort of housing stock perspective. And I think when we look at the properties that are not being utilized, there's something that we need to massively get right first, before then we start trying to build these vast estates, 6 phases developments, 7 phase developments, where they can obviously get a lot of negative kickback, NIMBYism, all the rest of it from local residents. And maybe some of that might be justified if we're not actually doing the basics right of utilizing what we've already got. And having a look through Land Attic, there's some absolutely stunning buildings in there. And I'm a bit of a nerd when it comes to architecture. Like, give me some Victorian Gothic architecture every day of the week. And when you walk around Birmingham and see some of the properties and some of the sites that are not being utilised, it's utterly heartbreaking to watch them decline into that. And that's important to say. There is a real sort of emotional side to this in terms of the situation that we find ourselves in with some of these empty homes. So I spent 8 years as an estate agent, and during that period, I worked with lots of different types of vendors. People selling quite large properties, quite high net worth properties. But my bread and butter was the two up, two downs. If it stank of piss, think of Chris, because it was a case where I knew that those properties could sell really quickly. I loved working with developers, loved working with investors that could revitalize some of these properties that had fallen into disrepair and get them back out on the open market. And plus, from a selfish commission perspective, it was great because I was recycling the revenue. So we were getting someone to buy this property, make a good impression with them, and then they wanted to stick it back on the market with me, or they wanted to let it through me. So there was a sort of an ecosystem going on there of these empty homes that was really working. But it's important to stress sort of the emotional side in terms of the situation that people find themselves in, where they've got these homes that are not being utilized. And I know we've got a mutual friend in Mohammed at Finders International, who are obviously doing some incredible work at the moment. And I know you're going to sort of give them a bit more of a plug later on, but one of the situations that I regularly think about when I think about my estate agency career, and it's one of the sort of horror stories that I've told to sort of friends and family, because they think that the job of an estate agent is quite glamorous. But anyone that's ever worked in property knows that property is not glamorous at all. It's actually, yeah, stood at the back of your back door, taking your clothes off because you've been infected with fleas, or Japanese knotweed spores all over, so you can't come into the house, is not a particularly glamorous profession, in my opinion. But yeah, there was one house that really stood out, and unfortunately, the house had been repossessed, and the situation that the gentleman found himself in was that he was an ex-army veteran. He'd taken up drinking quite in a heavily way to self-medicate for his PTSD. He had an amputation on his leg, so he was quite immobile in terms of being able to get up and down the stairs. So what had actually happened was he found himself living in the upstairs bedroom of this two up, two down house in quite a nice area, it has to be said. And that became his entire existence of just living in this bed in this bedroom and didn't leave. And during that time, the chimney had actually collapsed down into the living room. So the whole chimney stack had come down, fell away. All the brickwork was now lying in the middle of the floor of the living room. And the council or social services were made aware of this guy's living situation, and he was removed from the property. He was then put into care, into a situation where he could be looked after. And sadly, the chaps shortly died thereafter, probably because of his living situation and how he was experiencing. Now, this property sat dormant, empty for the best part of 9 to 12 months. And we used to drive past it every day as an estate agent. And you know what the old school estate agency owners like is like, Chris, have you been and put a leaflet through that door? Have you knocked on the door? Can you see if you can get them on the market? It's like, yeah. But you know full well there's no one in that property. So putting a letter through is a pointless exercise. If anything, it stacks up. Anyway, fast forward, the property actually got repossessed by the bank because obviously the guy hadn't been keeping up with his mortgage payments, and the situation was that the bank needed to regain their assets. So we actually had a contract with LSL, huge asset management company that specifically deal in repossessions. And when we went into the property to put it on the market, it was a really sad situation where the guy had, it was very clear that the guy had a problem with alcohol, chain smoking, because the whole bedroom was brown from the amount of tar and smoke damage that had been in the property. He obviously suffered with severe mental health issues, because he'd actually wrote "help me" on the chimney stack, where it had collapsed, in red paint, which might look like something out of The Shining. But yeah, I was assured it wasn't blood. It was actually it was red paint. And you saw the chimney stack. The weight of the bricks had actually, and a leak from water had collapsed the joists underneath in the living room. So there was a wooden joist holding up the floor. Obviously, a leak had come through. The weight of the bricks on top of that had collapsed the floor down into the void beneath. So this was just the basic stuff that was wrong with the property, let alone all the other issues that we found later on. Now, had that property been flagged earlier to the council while that guy was receiving care, or been moved into a more accommodating situation, they could have freed up the situation with that home. Maybe Finders International could have been contacted, and the assets could have been passed to the family to support him. So yeah, that's just kind of one situation, and I think it's really important to highlight that in terms of when we think about these empty properties, that yes, there is a massive opportunity with them, but there is also sort of a situation where if there's an empty home, it normally means someone needs help, and by coming forward and offering them, a sum of money for these properties, or freeing up that asset from them, is a massive situation.
Agree. Yeah, Chris, I think you've hit the nail on the head there. Really, I mean, it doesn't come back to my story very well about being a billionaire. Maybe I need to change that one. I did try and I was going to try and commit to steal someone else's story just for today, for exactly my passion for wanting to bring empty homes back into use. I have a massive passion for it, because it just frustrates me so much. But when I hear more and more stories, just like the one you've described, and then the implication it has on those neighboring properties as well. So it's a spin-off effect to other people. So not the person that's either occupying, or there's the next door neighbours, and it has a whole valuing element to it as well. So I don't know if have you experienced where you were selling a property and the property next to it was empty, and the concerns of the future purchaser of buying a property when they can see that the one next to it's empty, and you're trying to sell the one that clearly it's fine, but it's just it's got potential antisocial behaviour next door. It's got potential, issues in terms of maintenance. I mean, how do you find it from a valuing, or a sales perspective?
Oh God, yeah. I mean, I am the era of estate agent that introduced the wide angle lens. So taking a front elevation shot of a property, you can't hide what the neighbour's house looks like, because it was expected at that point to use a wide angle lens. Um, and we all know it was to make the rooms look bigger. But actually, psychologically, what it did is it gave you sort of a false sense that the house was actually bigger. So when you got there, you were less likely to buy it because it looks bigger in the pictures than it does in real life. But that's a story for another time. But yeah, so properties next door that were like empty, that were clearly dilapidated, maybe a similar situation to the gentleman that we had to sort of, whose home we had to deal with. Um, if there's sort of those sort of social issues going on, it's a massive issue. For anyone trying to buy a property that's not in that situation. Even if it's if it's a terraced home, the main concerns are damp, um, and also heating bills. Because if you're having to heat a home that's got no one living in next to it, there's a good chance that the heat is just going to be extracted in through that empty home next door. So your bills are automatically going to rise. Plus, if there's a leak in that home, if there's a boiler, then there's a situation where the pipes could expand, the water could leak out, and this could happen over a slow period of time without your knowledge. So gradually the water can penetrate into your home and you not necessarily be aware of it until there's some significant damage to the property. So these are the sort of concerns people would have in a terraced home. It kind of translates that to a semi-detached home. But then when you get into the realms of a detached home, that's when the security issues and the antisocial behavior starts to ramp up. Because if you've got a detached home, that's ideal for a squatting situation. Um, but also they're a lot easier to break into because the neighbors are not necessarily going to hear it if it's detached. And therefore, if they break into it, the kind of things that I've seen stolen are lead piping, lead flashing. I've seen a whole boiler ripped out, because they could actually sell the parts either as scrap or they could. I think there was a situation, particularly in Aviston, which is North Warwickshire, where they were stealing boilers and then reselling the entire boiler unit, to dodgy plumbers, basically, or dodgy gas engineers. So the there are sort of a range of different issues that come from these empty properties, depending on what size they are and what they, what sort of situation they find themselves in. Um, and then, of course, there's always the fire break situation. So, um, if we've got any surveyors on the call, you'll know that if a property's got a fire break, that's fine. It's mortgageable if it's done to building regs or if it's up to the right standards. Um, a lot of homes that I dealt with in the West Midlands didn't have a fire break in them, um, which is basically a wall between in the loft cavity that would separate terraced homes. And the reason is if a fire breaks out in one of the homes, and as of course we know heat rises and it goes up into the top of the loft, it then doesn't spread from the loft across the other homes. So there's like a physical brick wall to prevent that happening. Um, Amazingly, in the West Midlands, particularly North Warwickshire and sort of north of Coventry, there was still a lot of homes that hadn't had a fire break put in at some point during in these sort of Victorian, pre and post war terraced houses. So trying to get someone to not only pay to put that in, but also secure the property. If the property gets broken into, or there's antisocial behaviour in the property, or a fire breaks out, there's a gas leak, whatever could happen, then your property is immediately, like, within a situation where that your property is at risk. So from the psychology of a buyer, why would I want to take that on if if there's so much risk associated to my property? And I think that's why Land Attic is so important and Land Hero is so important. If you know these homes are empty, you need to report them so that those issues can be rectified and then they don't affect effectively innocent people that have done nothing wrong. They're just living their lives in their home, but sat
I think
next
it's
to taking
I think
time.
it's just a message pop up from Alan about some of the enforcement and actions can happen. I think it'd be good. Well, I think Alan, would be really good to move onto that. I was just going to have one more sort of anecdotal sort of story before perhaps we sort of did, and it was the story that I was going to steal, but also someone who's really making great waves in terms of helping local authorities. And I think, Alan, that's where definitely your direction was in terms of your sort of question about council tax, which we'll come on to in a second. Is that so Adam Cliff? He's from the Empty Homes Network. He is predominantly providing training and help and support for local authorities across England and the rest of the UK. He's really been pushing very hard to help and provide them the support that they need to try and get themselves into a position where they can use enforcement action, they can use powers. Local authorities have these powers. It's just very hard when they don't have the resource or the knowledge sometimes to do it. But picking on your point about that antisocial, that mental drive that someone might have, that mental issues of having or being next to an empty property. I mean, where he started out was it was his granddad. His granddad lived in a property next to what was another. It was a Victorian Edwardian property, was just adjacent to his. Um, and during the time he lived there, the amount of vandalism and the amount of antisocial behaviour that happened in that neighbouring property really, really caused some damage to his mental health. And this is where Adam really got his idea for the Empty Homes Network, because he just thought it's madness for this to have been going on for years and really affecting his granddad in such a way. And it really resonates with me, that there's lots of reasons why something may be empty. I think there's a few common reasons. I had a look under some of the Crisis have done a really good study on this, actually. Did it in 2023. I think even if you go on to the Empty Homes Network, I think even the Crisis have published on there, but if you just go onto the Crisis website, you'll find it. And they talked about some of the main reasons. Now, some are because it can be poor state of mental health, and maybe someone has actually been passed that property in inheritance, and they just can't deal with it. Maybe it's a property that's already starting to become dilapidated, and it all becomes a bit much for them, so they don't know what to do. Things obviously can get stuck in probate. It's one of the reasons that I think Chris talked about. In terms of finders and nationals, it can be quite hard to actually locate the owner. You might go on land registry, and there are plenty of systems out there which will help you. You can go onto the land registry itself online and find out who the owners are. But often even if you pay for it, it might not give you the full sort of information. You need to find out more of the history and go into it. And that's why we talked about Mohammed at Finders International in terms of the work they do, and they do that for local authorities to try and understand it. There's other reasons. Some people who just own it just don't want to. They literally just say, you know what, no, I'm not going to deal with it. I've maybe got other plans. It might be they've got other planning thoughts, or they might be just holding it for some other reason in terms of an investment sort of reason. And then, yeah, it's just a lot of it is down to just the limited resource and capacity of money that people have. They feel like they want to do something, but they don't know what else is available for them. And this is where we want to kind of really impassion everyone on this, on that's watching this now, and then when it goes further afield, that because something's empty, you have got an opportunity. You've got an opportunity to take it to the local authority, and that's what we are so passionate at Land Addicts do, is highlight these properties, get them over to the local authorities so they can build up a really good case for central government for money, but also internally, where there is availability of grant money. There are available sort of powers, and we'll come on to the powers in a second in terms of the enforcement they can do. But you actually, as somebody who wants to invest, when they write the descriptions of who can be involved in an empty property, yes, okay, it's housing associations. Yes, it is charities and community housing. But actually, it does actually say socially responsible developers as well. That is in that list. So you can go to local authority, and if you're helping push that forward, that can really open up an opportunity for you. So we really empower people to say, look, because you've seen it's empty, go to the local authority. The local authority have got all this, they've got some knowledge of where to get resource, and then you can find the right people to really present a case to the local authority to try and move something forward. The local authority then have a number of powers. Now, this is where I have got to defer to something like the Empty Homes Network. They are, the eminent trainer in this side of things, and also you've got the Empty Homes officers at local authorities as well. But there's a few things that are there. So there's something called an EDMO, I think it's called. which effectively is a process by which the local authority can follow that if a home has been empty for a decent period of time and the owner is not coming forward, then they can force what is an occupational sort of a management type process on taking back that property and being able to use it. So they just take across the management of that property in a statutory processed way, and then they can effectively fit it, and then they can actually place a tenant in there. And that is a process also. Now, the problem with this process, they've also got compulsory purchase orders as well as a process. And then they've also got process of lifting tax as well, which I think is what Alan mentioned before. So they can double up council tax, and they have these powers available to them. The hard thing for local authorities is the resource and the fact that these processes are costly, timely as well. They take a long time. So generally speaking, they would much prefer to work in partnership with the owner. And that's when we talked about the grants, opportunities of tax incentive, tax discounts as well, to try and bring that forward, because the statutory powers that are there, that are very available, and that central government are now trying to give local authorities more money and more resource and more power to try and push through, feel heavy, quite draconian, quite process sort of driven. And as a result, people seem to stray away from it. And also knowledge, knowledge of the person who's having the process put on them, but also process for the local authority themselves. And of course, with these, is you are allowed to represent in these. So as an owner of that property, you can make representations back in terms of why it should not be taken, the property shouldn't be taken away from you, or the management shouldn't be handed over to the local authority. So it's really important to see an empty property. And if you are struggling to get hold of a landowner, yes, we've talked about a couple of people that you can actually specifically contact, but go to the local authority, present them a case, present them something that you can actually help them, help themselves effectively. I think the costs are astronomical in terms of what we have in terms of amount of families stuck in temporary accommodation. Something like 100,000. It's costing the council 1.6 billion pounds per annum in terms of what they've got. So I've just seen there. So it is the yes, EDMO. So empty dwelling management order. So I saw that just pop up, and as I said, it's taking over this management thing element of process. So yeah, there's a huge cost going out from local authorities. This 1.6 billion going out. So to be able to get or help local authorities get into these empty properties, to get a chance of refurbing and then managing and getting people into them is good. But they need the support, they need the money, and they need active developers. As it said, it's very clearly put in there that actually socially responsible developers can be involved. It's not just left up to housing association things. So yeah, real sort of interesting set of mechanisms that are available there. I mean, that generally does relate to empty homes. I've not seen very much in terms of actual commercial buildings, but you then start entering into the compulsory purchase world, and compulsory purchase is for the public benefit. So the powers are there, but the encouragement needs to happen more. And this is why it's great that it's making national press, why it's great that we're trying to get communities sending in these properties to highlight it. And then you can show the history of how long these properties have been empty for, and also the impact that they're having either side in terms of for people as well. So yeah, I just wanted to really sort of highlight that. And I think, Chris, you touched on a really good point earlier about, we've got to release new homes. We do, because actually if we release new homes in terms of our, on our existing sort of settlements, on the fringe areas of settlements, they're much up to right building reg standards. They're much more efficient. We're having gas boilers that are being no more new gas boilers as of effectively this year, next year. That's in Part L. So every new home has got to be pretty much all electric, highly more efficient. But then saying that, we've got all this, effectively embodied carbon, which sits in all these properties that we've got. There's nothing better to meet net zero than actually improve those properties, actually put our stamp on them, bring in all the right sort of building regs into those properties to give a bit of an uplift to that area where you're actually turning something back, much more heat efficient, much more sort of, efficient just in all sort of aspects, where you can bring back something that is already there. And that it's not going to sort of go downhill. We've then got to demolish and then rebuild, which is highly carbon intensive, whichever way you look at it. But of course, it gets to a point where properties you have to, but we want to get them and capture them before that happens.
Great. So Ben, if you're a developer, how can you work with the local council to try and get into in on some of these properties and work in partnership with the council to support them retrofitting these homes?
The more pressure you put on, and I say pressure, it's encouragement because local authorities they have a tough job. It doesn't matter how much of a rough ride anyone gives them. Resources aren't necessarily there. The training isn't always there. They are absolutely reactional to so many things they have to do. So it's important to help them help themselves. Taking to them a property that is empty. Yes, if you've managed to do some background work to yourself as well, contacting someone like a Finance International, if you genuinely can't find out who the person or the owner is, and going to the local authority and saying, look, we can do something about this. Let's investigate this together. What do you need from us? We're a socially responsible sort of developer. We want to bring this forward. What can we do now? You're not going to get a yes the first answer. That's not the point. To show you're socially responsible, you've got to keep trying. And actually you've got to keep trying to help push something through. So taking that to them is really puts that, pin drop on the map. Of course, we want, to send it through to us as well, because these pin drops are available to local authorities. Our platform completely free to local authorities because we want them to see what's going on. We want them to see what's happening in their areas so they can see the photo history and they can see that they can make a difference. And this one is probably really important, part of that little set of community. So we'd be saying, Chris, to anyone who wants to be involved with this is take it to them, highlight it. Maybe they've already got the answer to it, but maybe they haven't. And that's what you can help with. But maybe they can say, well, actually, there's another one that we do need help on. So don't be defeatist when you kind of see those and be helpful. Doesn't matter what response you get. Doesn't matter how grumpy they are. Doesn't matter how much of a bad day or good day they're having. You keep taking it to them. Keep being positive. Keep being cheery and keep saying you can help make a difference. And that will get through. And then what happens is through understanding some of this information, will have to go to people like Adam at the UK at the Empty Homes Network because he's helping them, training them. He's training them to what process they can go through, what notice they can serve to, and what ways they can do to kind of really release that for somebody. And then you're making a huge difference. So I think we've already paid. So we paid about 25 grand to date, 25,000 to date to our communities. People who take a photo, win points, and then redeem it for cash. We also pay out to charities. The people who say, oh, I don't want to take the money, they give it to charity, which is just fantastic. But that money, we really want to plow back into the community to get them engaged, to send these in. They just feel that they want to make a difference in their community. So as somebody who's an investor or developer, see these, help take them forward because you're going to have the support from the local community to get those things reoccupied.
Amazing. So basically, moral of the story is go meet your local empty homes officer, put land attic in front of them and say, which one are you going to do a PCO and which one can I buy?
Yeah.
Alan's put a really interesting comment, and I think this ties in really nicely to what you've been saying, Ben. He said that how accommodating, enthusiastic have you found local authorities to participate in communicating or communications around trying to help bring empty homes back into use?
When you're an empty homes officer, you want to be enthusiastic. It's not easy being enthusiastic about something where you're having to deal with problems all day long. But those people who are in that role for a reason, and they are under-resourced. So I'm not saying it is easy, and some are a lot more responsive than others. But generally speaking, their absolute key goal is to get that property occupied. So they have enthusiasm for that. What they perhaps struggle with is giving answers to, this who owns this property. I mean, that's not helpful for them. They've got other people and other support networks around them, and hence we've talked about a couple of people that we've talked about today, Chris. So you want to go to them with what is the best pathway to trying to help solve it. If you make their life easier, then they've ticked a few boxes on their side, of which then you can do it. You can even start doing it saying, look, we've made approaches, and this is how many times we approach it. Here's our letter that we've been making approaches with to that landowner. Yes, we tried letter dropping. We tried sending the main address that we found out. We're doing some of the work for them. That gives them a bit of a lift in terms of the speed because you've done some of the pre-work, because so much of what they have to do is they have to show that they've actively tried to speak to that landlord, that person, that owner, will try to get in contact. And before they know it, they've got the other job that's just come in and they've got their real, antisocial issue on another property and they're getting distracted with that. So bring the case. So I probably haven't really answered the question, but generally they are receptive. They want to help. Every empty homes officer I've met, and normally through the Empty Homes Network and the conference that they do, are just so keen to feel supported and feel that actually they're important as well. They're not just sitting over in a desk in the corner over there having to deal with that issue, but they feel that they're really part of it. And it's a huge amount of value that's all assisting around this. So
Great. Yeah, guys, a few of you in the audience are raising your hands. Love to see that participation. If you want to put your questions, please put them in the chat. And we can obviously get round to those as quickly as possible. As I say, it's a totally interactive session. We're not able to invite you up onto the panel, but if you do want to put your questions in the chat, that would be great. And obviously, we're really keen to hear from you. So thanks very much for that.
Oh, go on. Sorry, go on.
I was just going to say, yeah. So I think if you took my approach of basically going in there all guns blazing with Land Attic and telling them which one are you going to sell me, that's probably not going to get the response. But it's like anything. I mean, if you've got if you're a landlord, you've dealt with a HMO officer. If you're, if you're looking to redevelop properties, you should be dealing with an empty homes officer, and those relationships that you build with them. You need to build long-term sustainable relationships and actually find out what makes them tick and what's going to be the best way to work with them, because everyone's different, every local authority is different. So yeah, it's really important, as you say, Ben, to build that relationship with them and ensure that you're working to their way of working, because obviously they've got a stressful job as it is.
Yeah, it might be as simple as just helping them secure a property. It seems a fairly basic thing to happen when something's empty is how to secure it. But once you've got an unsecured property, as you've just explained earlier, there's a whole raft of issues that then come through. So, an opportunity for either somebody you either know in security, or even somebody, who's on here, who's directly involved, that to take that to local authority. There is an empty property. Is there an opportunity sort of behind that? Answering your question, Alan, they don't. In terms of, so this is very much empty homes officers for empty homes, exactly that, what they were a previous home. Some, it's fallen through, inheritance sort of gap, but like things like pubs, commercial properties, that's just another whole area that you need to try and, or you can get your teeth into. And again, some developers are actually quite happy to see them vandalized because it gives them the opportunity to then claim in terms of pushing for planning. But there's so much opportunity behind the temporary element of that building. So you have guardianship. So we talked about securing the building, physically securing it. There's a secondary element which is called guardianship, where people actually get the opportunity to live in a place, with actually just the basic sort of facilities, which is fantastic for them. Whilst you potentially even receive an income, or you even managing to get your building just secured for fairly sort of low cost, because you've got somebody who's living there who's benefiting, and it's a two-way street benefit there. So going to people with what is some of the basic solutions, to then prevent the problem, moving forward, then is that first step. And once you take those first steps, the opportunity's there. Then you start to move into the other things of thinking like, well, okay, EPCs. I mean, you're moving quite a lot bit further on now, but you've got those opportunities where you can't put it on the market until something's had an EPC. So you've got to go through some of those sort of processes, and just people who are like early on that stage to kind of get some momentum moving. It's that snowball effect. You've got to start off small to move through. Your end goal might be you want to buy it and you want to refurb it and get occupation into it, but start off really simple. And if you can start off simple, you'll get the engagement. And we found that across the board with all work we do. It is, start with those sort of very fundamental basic problems to prevent a problem from happening and prevent a cost from occurring as well.
Great stuff. And Ben, before we sort of wrap up, and I'm just going to give everyone a chance to put their questions in. Where can people find Land Attic? How can people work with you? I'm just going to put in the link in the chat, but where can people find it?
You beat me to it. So I mean, you've done it. So yeah, very much. If you type in Land and Attic into Google, you will find us. We're on the social media sort of platforms as well, so very heavily pushing LinkedIn. A big one, and it has been really, really significant for us, is why I've just said about the big increase in numbers that we've had recently. I don't want to give him too much of a big head, but I have been working with Chris. We have been very much posting in the UK Homes Network, and I think what's just given us a real lift in terms of how we're presenting ourselves socially, how we're sort of presenting ourselves in terms of what we're about and how we're sort of pushing forward, and just really opening the door to, very much a centralized property socialization network. And that's really helped us improve our own social networks, but actually being part of one that we know is more dedicated has really helped, especially with the questions and everything else that we're getting and actually through the platforms in terms of what we're doing. So yeah, you can find us in the UK, the Homes Network. Land Attic is obviously the name there anyway, and very much that Chris very kindly posted the website as well about it. So
Amazing. Thanks, Ben. I really appreciate that. It's always great to get that feedback on UK Homes Network. Yeah, so guys, if you haven't signed up, please do. I'll just quickly share the QR code one more time. If you want to go to your app stores and you can download UK Homes Network, set up a profile for free. It's also important to say that we've also got all our webinars, so you can catch all the webinars I've done with Ben, and there's a few of them. Ben, why have we not done a podcast yet?
well, it doesn't translate my green suit very well. There's on a podcast. I don't know.
That's
Would it be all right?
That's an important point. We have faces for TV, not for radio, so we need to show them. That's basically what it
You
is.
know, but maybe next year. This is what we've got. This is what we've got to do, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so guys, if you want to watch all the previous episodes that me and Ben have done, and we've also had a number of other subjects with other guests that we've got. All the recordings are free to watch in UK Homes Network, so please do go and watch them back. It'd be great to have you guys sharing your discussions, sharing your experience of empty homes within UK Homes Network. So please do head over to there. Let us know any feedback from the webinar. If you enjoyed it, please do post that in UK Homes Network as well. And of course, Ben and Land Attic will be posting regularly in there, so you can keep up to date with all the great stuff that they're doing. Now, Mark has put a really important point in there, and I think this is going to sort of really help contextualize your relationship with working with empty homes officers. And he sort of said, I've got an empty project which we are currently refurbishing. Would that be a good idea to call the empty homes officer? Very clicky, trying to get in. I think maybe if you're already working on the project and it's not an empty home at this stage and you're working on it to rehouse someone, I would say it's probably not going to be top of their priority list at the moment. However, if it was a project that you were looking to buy and that it was empty and it was vacant, that's probably when your empty homes officer would probably be a bit more receptive and able to help you out. Is that right, Ben? Is that your experience?
Yeah, Chris, absolutely. You know what thing is, if you're feeling that you want to be involved in the local authorities, there's no harm in selling, here are my credentials and this is what I'm doing. But no, Chris is absolutely right. You're going to them with helping what is an existing empty property that you don't own, that you basically want to be involved in.
Great. And he's just followed up. It's a vacant section 21 served and done. I can't
And
remember.
that's something. Well, yeah, speak to your local homes officer on that basis. Then we're starting to get into more the technical side of things now, and it is really important to engage with them. So we would absolutely encourage that. And I think this is the point: is taking your knowledge, and even if you don't have much knowledge, but taking your intention to them. And I think that is really, really important. And as I said, if you need contacts to really get in depth of what the local authorities need to learn, then please post in the UK Homes Network. Please get in contact with myself and Chris, because we absolutely know that in Adam Cliff and the Empty Homes Network, he has the answers. He is training all the local authorities. He's been down to Parliament. He's done a lot of lobbying down that side of things. He's just written to all the constituencies across the UK, and he's involved in a number of, well, pretty much all the local authorities across the UK. So, really important to get in there, and very, very approachable as well. Despite me stealing his story, which slightly worries me. But yeah, no, all do. And let's be honest, in this country, we're not doing too bad. I think I'll just a couple of stats to leave with as well. There's 8.5 million properties empty in Japan. There's 16 million empty in USA. So, Adam, Cliff, Mark. But we'll post that as well. I'll post that in the network. But yeah, all good. Thanks very much for me, and I know Chris will probably send us out from this.
Brilliant. Yeah, thanks, guys. It's been a brilliant session. Love to see all your engagement in the chat and getting so stuck in. We've got another webinar coming up with Andy Butts, who is the New Homes and Investment Director of Centric. Andy's going to be talking about the year that's just happened, the budget, interest rates, just really dissecting what a year it's been and what we can expect from 2025. So I'd love you guys all to join. If you want to go into UK Homes Network, go to the events tab. There's the link in there to register. But thank you so much to Ben. It's always really great fun when you come on. You've even gone to the extra effort of being totally on brand, which
I've got to go make some. I've got to go make some presents now for Father Christmas. For now, I'm my elf suit. So
I'm going to get you a hat. I can see it now. The hat is coming. Yeah. But yeah, no, thanks, Ben. I really appreciate it, mate. It's been a really good fun session. And yeah, if anyone wants to contact you directly, please drop Ben a message in UK Homes Network. And if you want to ask me any questions, please feel free. But I look forward to seeing you guys posting in UK Homes Network later on today. All right, cheers, guys.
thanks, everybody. Have a great
Take
Christmas.
care. Merry Christmas. Bye-bye.
Bye.